This is The Body's Compass with Matt Sorensen and today's guest, Lani Finau, who is a clinical nutritionist who has featured in publications such as Mamma Mia, 9 Honey, Body and Soul, News.com and Refinery29. In other work, Lani is the head of sports nutrition at the New South Wales Tonga Netball Association and is also on the Endeavour College of Natural Health's Academic Discipline Committee, Biosciences. Let's join Matt and Lani in part 1 of 2 episodes as they challenge modern nutritional guidelines.
Welcome, everybody, to The Body's Compass. I'm Matt Sorensen today with a very special guest, another practitioner of True Woo. Hello, Miss Lani.
Hello, Matt. Thank you so much for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
You are most welcome. I'm looking forward to getting into some dialogue. But before we do, just so the listeners can just get a sense of, who you are and how everything you're going to talk about is going to influence your viewpoints. Can you share an overview of what shaped you as a woman and has what led you putting so much time and energy into studying nutrition?
For sure. My journey started pretty early, so we can start there. I did a lot of representative netball playing up, and that was truly the initial part where I was starting to piece together the dots myself, that my body is a bit different to what just the generic advice is for a young teen athlete. And, you start to understand, okay, my cousins who are also playing high level footy and stuff, and we'll just chat at family events. Like, it's very different for them for what I'm experiencing. And I think I found it a very interesting phase through maybe that 12, 13, 14 year group of noticing how different my body started to feel as a growing young teenage female, and then also playing a sport that by nature is pretty female dominant. And I just remember getting in, like, a lot of our sports dietitians through the associations were talking to us a lot about our bodies and starting to make us understand, you as a woman, as a female, have some quite different requirements, your hormones, etc. And I just describe it to people as, like, over my, little netball time of career, I guess you could call it, up until I played until I was about 18, I started to fall more in love with taking care of my body than even just what my body could do on the court and playing the game that I loved. And then just went straight into uni straight after that. But I think that sets a lot of understanding of my journey. Started quite young, so I really love working with the younger generations, a lot of young teen female athletes. They're sort of my heart and soul because I remember being right there.
How old were you when you were doing
netball?
I guess, all the netball
I
stuff.
only started playing at 11 years old, and the first state team you can make is that year. And it went very much from, like, I literally started playing, learnt how to play, was in, B5, under 12s, whatever it was, and just was like to my parents, hey, I love this thing. Just let me know what I can do to keep getting better and better. And it was my dad. He played a lot of sport. And he was like, well, you can focus on your nutrition and you can train more. And by the end of that first year, I was in our first state team. So it was a very quick acceleration from, like, didn't even know how to catch and throw to then playing at the highest level you could at that age, which was very rare. I know that, like, the fact that I have the most hilarious story of at nationals that year, I was still learning some of the rules, like the really, nitty gritty, like the stuff that I just never heard at club netball, whatever. And my coach had to be like, Lani, that's a rule. Like, come on, you're not allowed to, whatever it was, do this for whatever. I was like, gosh, technicalities, just let me play. Anyway, so quite young. And then just because it all started, like, the moment I started playing, it was at a more serious level that was sort of all I knew from netball for my entire time playing up until 18.
Yeah, wow. It's funny you say that because every athlete that I've coached and worked with, they all say as soon as you get to a certain professional level, it's got nothing to do with the sport anymore. It's just the business, politics.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, such a good point to bring up. That I will say, I think it was very interesting that was almost the only aspect I got to be exposed to. I obviously had a very immediate love and passion, but I will say, like, that's not a very long time to play, 11 till 18. But definitely I think around the 16-year age group when you start, at least for us, we're getting pushed into then the senior levels and you're just playing opens by that point. It was so different and just, it was hard for me to find that passion still when it was just a numbers game, a statistics game, sit, go home, rewatch your game. Like, doesn't matter how much fun you had on the court that day. It's just that, which I understand. That's why it's a career. It's a whole journey you have to be committed to. And I have beautiful friends that kept going down that path, but they will say it to you too. They're professional athletes now. It's their full-time job, but it's not the passion that's the only thing there anymore. It is their job, Anyway, very interesting point you make.
I mean, yeah, that's a whole episode in itself.
Yes.
And I know with the nutrition side of it, it's almost down to the exact molecule that they're consuming. And from my my experience working with the athlete who's involved with the sport, there's no real great assessing going on.
No.
You take 50 milligrams of that, 100 grams of that, and then they tell you what to eat, how to shit, when to do it all. And it's probably more interesting when athletes retire because all that has gone.
Yes.
And they have no idea what to do with themselves.
No, and that's why you have that whole interesting phenomenon of these people that were what we would consider the healthiest people that exist in our society then suddenly are struggling with type 2 diabetes and rapid weight gain because their lifestyle and what they fueled their body with was tailored to the amount of physical activity that they did, which can't be matched in any other circumstance unless you being a professional athlete. And so, and then I can only imagine on the physiological side of things, the long-term injuries, aches, pains that you must see must be fascinating. Long-term, lifelong issues, I presume.
Well, it's not only physiological, it's actually psychological. Well, because at one point in their perception, they meant something, and they were this symbolic ideology of
this is what I offer, this is what I bring to the world,
and this is what I am. And then as soon as that stops, all the attention stops. But all they know is the diet. All they know is the routine. And as soon as that stops, then they've got to face themselves. And they just don't have the tools to do it. And you see it more from, I guess, when kids leave school, they go straight into the sport, like a first grade, and there's no life behind them.
No. And you know what's so interesting? I actually think that was something that played into a big part of my decision making at that pivotal point. When you're ending your high school duration and life is coming at you rapidly, I was aware that the sport I'd chosen is not one that is super feasible to make a financially viable career from. All of the professional netballers that I am still close with who were in that same bucket of teens, they all still have jobs alongside their full-time careers. It's the harsh reality of our sport and a female sport that you could be at the top of your game and still need to work some version of a 9 to 5 around that career. Yeah. And I just think as well, having that over my head of, well, I can sit here and pour my entire life into this career, but I will still need something to back it up. And that was then realizing, well, I love nutrition so much. Maybe I try and do both. And then just having that personal, split road decision of, well, I actually have more passion for the nutrition aspect right now. But regardless, I was going to have to study it and I was going to have to have something to lean on, not just for the what do you do beyond sport, but for, in my circumstance, what do you do while you're playing? Because you can't earn enough to live off that for sure. It's challenging.
It is. I could talk about that all day, but I'm trying to keep on nutrition.
Yes.
I will
we'll bring it back. Why not?
Yeah. But it's very clear to me from my own studies of nutrition and the influence on, the viscera, especially the GI tract, that medical doctors, chiropractors, osteos had much more of a conscious awareness of the connection between the organs and the musculoskeletal system up till about 1950. After that, there seems to be a bit of a loss of that training and knowledge. Can you share your thoughts on the history of medical professionals' understanding of the connection between our diet and inflammation?
Yeah, at the moment, it's not enough of an understanding. That is exactly the experience I've had. And I was quite lucky. There was quite a few years I worked very closely with a team of doctors and nurse practitioners in one of the companies I worked for, because we were a multidisciplinary telehealth tech company. And so I had a lot more access to them than what I would traditionally even have in private practice, because these were my colleagues, teammates. We're all under the exact same umbrella, working with the exact same clients. It was a lot easier for us to communicate. And that, out of all of the times, that was when it really started to reiterate to me, because I could have seamless back and forth conversations with the doctors, opinions on, XYZ diet that I'm considering or specific supplements. And they just very clearly would say to me, Lani, I can tell you the contraindications with the medications I've got this person on, but the rest of it, I'm listening to you. I don't have that background. I can give you the base level. And we were lucky. We had very open and understanding clinicians, doctors, nurse practitioners on that front, which I think you do run into a little bit of a different circumstance, at least I find in private practice. I don't get the privilege of working in the exact same facilities as those doctors and nurses. And so, that rapport's not there. And I will have scenarios where I'll have clients come in and be told some advice about nutrition, very generic, you've got this, follow this. And I can probably give you a really specific example to do with iron deficiency, just working with women, especially a lot of female athletes. Iron deficiency is the most prominent nutrient deficiency worldwide, but obviously disproportionately affects women. And they're still told, eat your steak and make sure you have a glass of orange juice with it because you need vitamin C to help, that iron absorb. And I just seen there thinking to myself, first of all, you only really need the non-heme iron, so like plant-based iron, to have that high dose vitamin C for absorption. So if you're having a piece of steak, you're absorbing most of that iron. We're all good there. Second of all, the vitamin C coming from the orange juice, as in that same cup of juice that has the same amount of sugar as a cup of Coke, surely we can give them some better examples of vitamin C rich foods. God forbid we recommend broccoli or capsicum or something. And it's just not there. That knowledge just doesn't exist. And I am under the impression, from what I've been told, is that there is maybe 3 hours worth of nutrition information provided, like 3-hour lecture worth of nutrition information provided to our GPs and things, which is
that
not
through their entire training?
Their entire training.
Wow.
That's what I've been told by the GPs I've worked with. They had one equivalent of one lecture, which was about a 3-hour lecture. That's it. And they're expected to then deliver general nutrition advice to the majority of our population. And then they're giving the advice from, 50 years ago, which is just so outdated now that I don't know, like, where do we meet in the middle of these discussions that are then had to the client, and the client's sitting there like, well, my GP, who, doctors, nurses, they tend to sit at the highest hierarchy of information. So then someone's sitting there with torn information of, well, my GP, my doctor who I've seen for 25 years told me this, and now you're telling me don't have vitamin C with your steak. That is not what we're working towards here for your iron. Who do I listen to? And it's a challenge. I completely appreciate for clients and just the average person trying to decipher through all this noise when there is so much miscommunication happening within the health practitioners themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I also heard that, and this was from an MD, that, and it's, I'll start by saying it's funny how a lot of celebrity chefs get in trouble, right? I'll just put that there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Pete Evans being a classic example. I heard depending on where they study, they get between 2 to 4 hours of training. I've heard even up to 2 weeks over like a 7-year doctorate. But the funding, 60% of doctors' funding comes from big pharma. So that's not a huge surprise. But the hour or 2 or 3 or 4 of nutrition training the doctors get are from chefs. So I find that quite interesting.
I had no idea about that. I find that very interesting too. And I also am not across the depth of the actual nutrition information chefs are taught versus, the cooking and how they're actually preparing the food. I'm not even across that, but that is fascinating statistic.
Well, I would certainly trust a chef's nutritional advice over GPs.
So. Same.
I mean, they know more about food.
With the food. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting conditioning that we've been brought up with to put, priests, teachers, doctors, certain positions where we're perceived and told that their word is gospel.
Yes.
Not knowing who wrote the gospel.
Exactly. And that is what is a very interesting pivotal point at the moment that we're at, because information is so accessible. People can click on to a podcast like yours and actually get some real information from people that are in the field. You are starting to see that shift of people now not always taking that word as gospel, which is excellent. And it's something that I will communicate to my clients too. You shouldn't take any individual practitioner's word as gospel. You should take multiple viewpoints at all times. But at the end of the day, no one knows their body better than you do. You know your own body. And so if something doesn't feel right and some professional sits in front of you and says, oh, but that is fine. Your iron is fine. What are you talking about? But you don't feel good. Question it. Find someone else, have the conversation. Question it, find someone else, have the conversation. Starting to bring the power back to the people of, you don't just have to listen to what you were told by one of these higher up positions and take it as gospel. And you now have the autonomy and resources available to you to start to question what was told.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've done a lot of study with Paul Chek and the Chek Institute, and during our level 1 training, I think it's on the second or third slide, probably one of the quotes that he said gave me one of the, probably the biggest respect and like, okay, this guy knows his stuff. And it's a quote from him saying, don't believe anything I or anyone else says until you tried it for yourself.
Yes.
Like straight up. I know probably 20 years ago, everything was sort of results-based. Now everything's called evidence-based and researched and studied. And as soon as I say evidence-based, I cringe.
Yes.
But that's a different story altogether.
Absolutely.
And I will say to people, whatever you eat a lot of, just eat ideally an organic version of it or a better version of what you're having. I read somewhere that the research said organic's bullshit or this is that. I said, look, you're going to find 100 papers saying it's great, 100 papers saying it's crap. Why don't you be an adult and try it for yourself and see how you feel? Because as you were saying, you are the best analysis.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily about getting the specific vitamin or mineral. Sometimes it is, but it's also how much sleep have you had?
Oh my
What's your exercise program like? You had a fight with your partner, just before this. That's going to affect absorption of everything.
Exactly. Starting to piece together, you can never focus on one piece of the puzzle and expect that to solve everything. That's never going to be the case. And even to your point earlier about, we have research on, okay, well, we assume most humans should be having whatever, the 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram that they weigh. Okay, great. That's good until a point, but that doesn't account for everything else. How can you say that one particular nutrient only rides off one particular metric and that you can blanket have that go for every human. And it does it exactly to your point. Your clinician can give you guidance up to the exact limit point that we have of support available and evidence and research available, but only you are going to be able to do that and say, have you seen me? I can't eat that much protein, or I'm starving after that because did you know what? I actually train for 2 hours every day. So maybe I should have a bit more than that. It's probably a little bit more important than just how much I weigh. You know, we can just try and go black and white on everything, but it's not possible. And the deeper you go down this path, especially of understanding your own health, nutrition, well-being, you will start to realize that yourself of no one thing is going to solve this. I need to be looking at all of my lifestyle every single day, how I interact with the entire world around me.
Yeah, I grew up with asthma, and it wasn't severe, but I had, the odd attack every now and then. And I was on God knows how many medications at the time. I'm talking up till the age around 10-ish. So for several years I had asthma. Yes. And twice a year, typically the change of the seasons, I would get really, really, really sick, like bedridden for a week. And I've been told, oh, you got to have this, you got to have that, you'll be on this medication for the rest of your life because of this. And so the story goes.
Yes.
And this is just what worked for me personally. I switched to 100% organic for 2 years.
Yep.
Gone.
Yeah.
Haven't had asthma since.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. And this is what you've had, one of those brilliant miracle moments. There was no practitioner that could have told you that will solve all. You had to test that yourself. And then the heartbreaking reality being someone next to you could try the exact same thing, even a similar person. You could say similar weight, similar height, similar lifestyle, similar, and they could try that and they may not have that outcome. And it comes back to your exact point. The only person that's actually going to know that at the end of the day is you. And that is also why you need to try different things and not just let the roadblock hit you and be like, well, now nothing works. I tried one style of eating. It didn't work. So no style of eating works. It just doesn't work like that.
I mean, a lot of people have the psychology that I can't be fixed.
Yeah.
And that actually, paradoxically for them, it actually gives them quite a lot of leverage and a lot of power.
Yes.
Against other people. But that actually brings a nice little segue into the next question of what percentage of people's nutritional challenges do you feel emanate from genetic influences versus diet and lifestyle choices versus some kind of structural challenge?
I love that quite harsh quote, but genetic load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. And I do see it in clinic. And don't get me wrong, I'm always going to do a genetic history and it's probably influencing 10, 20% of their overall outcomes. But how much that outweighs versus what they're doing day in and day out, eating, what's their work, are they on their feet all day? Are they a painter exposed to who knows how many toxins every day? They don't wear a mask. Are they doing a home reno and they're, at home all day with these harsh chemical cleanings? They're, polishing their floorboards and they've done that for the past 2 months and they're wondering why they're having an eczema flare up at the same time. It's all these things of, I'm a huge, huge believer that the larger percentage is coming from your lifestyle and your nutrition habits. Structural though, I put that into the similar category of, genetics. Like there is factors that you can't change that, especially if you have, some long-term challenging injury or whatever it may be that then is impacting your physical activity. We can do things in your nutrition that are going to help lower and mitigate some of the inflammation and pain that you're experiencing. But there is a complete cutoff point where we're at the best we can with managing that, but that is the reality. But it's the majority coming from lifestyle and nutrition of what I see every day. And that is why it's also so empowering for people on the flip side of that's all things that you could change. Not tomorrow, not in a year, like now. The next decision you make, you can make a choice to eat this or don't eat that. move your body or don't move your body, breathe a certain way, don't breathe a certain way, cut somebody out of your life or keep them in your life. You know, all those facets you fortunately have more control of. And so if anything, that should help empower people, and we can get out of that mindset of, well, I was just born this way, so there is nothing I can do about it. There is always something you can do about it. And in fact, most of what you can do is in your control. Do you feel the same? Is that something that you see?
Yeah. Have you heard of psychoneuroimmunology?
No.
Big word.
Big word, yeah.
Essentially, according to psychoneuroimmunology, it dictates what you eat, dictates how you think. And I put that to a psychologist one time. He said, that's completely false. I said, please explain why you think that was false. But he couldn't really.
Yeah.
And then I said to him, so you can't really separate a thought from a body.
Yeah.
Where does the mind stop and the body begin? The mind is an embodied process, right? We can't experience mind without a body and vice versa. We get our clarity of thought from our environment, but we need nutrition to fuel that process. Yes. But then if you're eating crap, that's going to affect your digestive tract. There's more neurons in the gut than the brain and the spinal cord combined. So it's more of, we've got an abdominal brain. So what you eat dictates how you think, because have you ever noticed that as your capacity to digest food goes down, your capacity to think goes down?
Yes.
As your capacity to think goes down, the capacity to create what you want goes down. And then just next minute, you feel stuck. Yep. So that's where most people just get caught in that little hamster wheel.
And you find that so fascinating as well from the point of view of people actually identify that themselves without identifying it. As in, we all will have that wake up the next day. Let's say it's post Christmas or whatever, or post your birthday. And so you've eaten maybe really different to what you normally eat. And you can come the next day and people complain, oh, I don't feel good. I feel sluggish, or I'm in a bit of a mental slump. I'm not very motivated. And they have that connection. But then the moment you try and bring it to a more specific, well, okay, so if you can complain about the thing, complain about the outcome that you're aware of, then why can't we flip it and you use that to your leverage and your advantage of, well, I can use this as much of a treatment for helping with my mood, my anxiety, depression, my feelings of stress and how I manage stress and adapt to stress, that why doesn't it piece together quicker for you that we can do so much with your movement, lifestyle, nutrition, just as much as walking into your doctor and saying, what's the next medication I can try? And I find that so interesting from the psychologist that you spoke to bringing that up. It's a shame that some clinicians are not at that stage yet where they realize, but very fortunately, at least there are some that are starting to piece together. I have one psychologist who refers a lot of her clients across to me, predominantly working with depression and anxiety as well. And she will explain to them, it's like walking hand in hand, and I'll get you to a point and then I need to pass you on to the next person. And everything we did is still going to exist, the therapy, whatever the medication is you're on, if you're on any, but there comes a point where we need to layer in the next things. And that's when you're going to start to see true change, changing how you eat to the point, of your digestive tract. Also, 90% of our serotonin, our happiness hormone, as everyone likes to call it, is produced in the gut. And so how can you not even just look at those numbers? So you don't need to be any type of expert to hear that and be like, well, we're probably starting to see some importance in my maybe taking care and considering what I eat is impacting how I feel.
Yeah, a lot of people think depression or anxiety exists in the head, which it's quite interesting because physiologically it can't.
No.
The brain responds to the thought of the organ.
Exactly.
And it's, it can be quite tricky. I know a lot of psychologists will say that anxiety is simply a GABA deficiency. Or depression is not enough dopamine, or I can't remember the other neurotransmitters right now. But they think it's just a missing of something. They don't factor in, as you're saying, absolutely everything. Like even someone's posture. You'll notice depressed people often have the same posture.
Yes.
And you think about where the thymus gland is, right, that fuses itself as we get older behind the sternum. That's your well-being gland. But if that's not being well, then you hug that, and then that becomes your posture. And they've shown that when they force depressed people to smile and to stand up straight, their mood improves and they start producing those hormones and those neurotransmitters just by themselves. So isn't that interesting?
So I just love stuff like that. I love the whole looking external. And, that reminds me of as well how everyone is so obsessed with studying and observing the blue zones of the world, these longevity little dot points across our whole globe of these people that are living for so much longer, and they will rip apart the diet. It's this in the diet and they're eating this and they do have a glass of wine a day. So, and I just sit there and think to myself, we can analyze that diet to know tomorrow, but do you know what it actually is? It's the fact that they actually cook and connect and sit together and eat socially, and they're not sitting on their mobile phone eating some microwave meal from plastic and watching TikTok all alone and wondering why, but the macros of this meal are perfect. Why? Of course, who cares about that? You have not engaged with that food and the people around you the entire time you did that, and you're wondering why we can look at these people and think they live to 110. What's the magic nutrient they're eating? I hate to break it to you, it isn't. It's not that. It's the entire lifestyle around it. The fact that they took the hour to actually prepare that food with their loved ones, sit without a device, connect with the people they love, touch the people's hands that they're loving, laugh, engage. That's what's keeping them alive. And it's all of it, that alongside the food and where they live and whatever.
Not to mention it probably took them several hours to go out and catch their dinner.
Oh my gosh, even
together.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not even just the food that showed up at their doorstep, DoorDash, or, we get Woolworths to even drop our groceries to us now because, gosh, we can't get to the actual store.
God forbid. Yeah. It's quite interesting. Have you heard of, what's it called? Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price?
No, that's not the book. I saw you mention a book earlier, but no, is it a book or is it a podcast or what? It is
a book, and I think the Weston Price Foundation has a podcast as well. But that became a foundation because Weston Price was a dentist and he went around the world. He traveled, I think, 30 years around the world.
Yes.
And he compared native tribes to people dwelling in the city, but he was really looking for twins that were separated. One stayed with the tribe, one stayed in the city. And he was a dentist, so he tracked these tribes and these people down and, assessed their dentition, their craniofacial structure, which is if you take finger, thumb and finger, the chin, it should fit between chin and nose, nose and between your eyebrows, and then eyebrows to your hairline. And that's the craniofacial structure. And a lot of people these days, you'll notice, have a short middle third, which creates a lot of breathing difficulties, which, as you would know, creates a myriad of other stuff that we need medication for. But he showed that the person who always stayed with the tribe always developed properly, developmentally speaking, and far less diseases, far less, even injuries. They didn't determine which one lived longer, but the one that stayed with the tribe always lived a lot healthier.
Wow.
Every single time. And I find it funny when I hear all these, you've got to be plant-based to live forever.
Yeah.
And it's,
no.
That's a story in itself. But anyway, what he was showing as well is that even the nomadic tribes, they followed the game around.
Yes.
We evolved on animal-based omega-3. The brain evolved itself. And the only time that the healthy tribes went, let's say, vegetarian, or even, vegan wasn't even a thing then, they went more plant-based was because there was no other food around.
Yeah.
But if they had a choice between a deer and a salad.
Yeah. Absolutely. 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 And that's the thing. It actually is heartbreaking that everyone is consistently trying to pinpoint a specific diet and say that this is the blanket thing because they did it at this snapshot in time and it had this particular outcome, then they will try and put that as the blanket answer to everything. And I think that's what's really coming through on this conversation that I hope anyone takes away is that there is none. There is no magic pill, no magic diet, no magic exercise that's going to fix everything. You need to start observing the whole and how you interact with the world on a social level, on a spiritual level, and on a physical level.
Lani, few people understand where their food comes from, let alone nutrition, which can only really come from the soil. Many researchers, including scientists and farmers, showing plants getting their nutrition from the soil, animals getting their nutrition from the plants. Humans eat animals and plants, so do the math. In regards to disease and hormonal health, this doesn't seem to quite make it to mainstream. What's your thoughts in that regard?
Love this topic. Yes. So I can at least specifically give people something to listen to that they will all be like, oh yes, okay. It's not necessarily nutrient, but everyone loves to blame gluten for every issue in their body. I'm inflamed because of gluten. I'm this because of gluten. I'm that because of gluten. Now, don't get me wrong, gluten in Australia is processed pretty poorly. We have pretty short stem, gluten plants, wheat plants, whatever. Okay. That's a real situation. And then people go overseas, maybe in Europe, and they suddenly can eat the pasta and they don't have a problem. And everyone listening to this, if you've had the privilege of going overseas, then you probably can sit there and think, yeah, it's true. When I'm overseas, I feel a bit better. Now, sure, we can pinpoint that is like an agricultural issue that we've got going on. But do you know what else was happening when you were overseas? You were more relaxed. You're on holiday. You probably were in a state of not this fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system overdrive. Like you probably slept in a bit, actually got 8 hours that night, weren't checking your phone 55 times before you even left your bed. And so, it's really important that we talk about the poor quality of our soil and all of these issues of how we process our wheat and whatever we want to go down that path. But bringing a little bit back to what we just spoke about before, how you are physically showing up to that meal is going to impact how you process it. I have a client right now who is one of the most extreme eczema cases that I have had through my clinic, full body ever since the age of about 10, just really struggling. We've gone to a great point from, again, I can help you with the nutritional side, supplements, starting to help you look at some of the other aspects out of nutrition that are impacting. This client is on holidays at the moment, no flare-ups, nothing. Skin is clear, where everything's fine, not even needing to take the supplements because we're chugging along well. And finally, she's starting to paint that picture. It's because she's not stressed from work, life, the job. She's not spending 1 million hours on her phone each day. She's just present and enjoying her time and eating in a slower paced environment. But to bring it back to the, your question of it's just not really mainstream knowledge, it isn't. And also, do you know why it's not mainstream knowledge that our soils and whatnot are depleted? Because the food industry, and from a government perspective, is very quick then to fortify certain foods with these minerals and nutrients, which I understand, again, from a very large public health perspective, chuck folic acid in our bread, whatnot, let's try and get the levels up. But starting to get people to understand that doesn't mean you then look at that particular fortified food as the sole way to get that particular nutrient. And if anything, that should flag to you, oh my goodness, okay, so the natural way that we get it is currently not possible because we have such poor quality availability of, iodine in our soils or whatever the one you want to look at is. I need to start paying attention to eating as whole as possible organic if possible, eating food that I typically wouldn't, as in most people will have maybe 5 or 6 different types of vegetables a week, and that's just on their rotation, because in our household we have broccoli, cauliflower, carrot, we buy frozen peas, and that's what the kids eat, and so that's what we eat every single week. And so the more important thing to me is just bring some variety back as first step. We all know the statistic of people are meant to be having anywhere from 30 to 40 types of vegetables and fruits across the week. And we're just not. Everyone is having less than 5, maybe less than 10 in a really good household. And so all of that comes into it as well, of we're not only getting poorer quality soil and poorer quality output of the produce from that soil and for what the animals eat and whatnot, but we're not even eating variety in the first place. So we're just bringing it back a step already.
Yeah. When you were talking about the gluten, I had to sort of laugh because last year, so I went to Germany.
Yes.
To meet my girlfriend's parents who don't speak English. So that was fun. But then before going, I was thinking to myself, I was getting quite a little bit anxious because, as you were saying, the gluten here, you know, if Germany had a national food, it would be bread. 3,000 different types of bread. I thought, great, I'm going to be eating bread all the time, probably beer, cheese, all the things that I wouldn't eat normally. So I'm not going to shit for a month.
Yeah.
Fact. So like, okay, you know, I've got a mission to do. That's fine. I'll deal with that later. Went over there, ate the bread, had the beer, all the things. I've never been more regular in my entire life.
Fascinating.
And that was like, what's going on here? So I did a bit of research. Admittedly, it was in German, so it took me a time to unravel it. But with their, and I shared this in a podcast a couple of weeks ago, with their bread, they're only allowed maximum 5 ingredients. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
And her dad was saying that if a bread has 10 ingredients, for example, no one's going to buy it. If they have that option at the bakery, no one's going to buy it.
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting. With beer, they only have 3 or 4 ingredients.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
So
that is fascinating, isn't it? And how as well, because they're, you know, that again, it just comes exactly back to what we're talking about. You actually just can't point and say, well, then that's the reason in Germany they have these problems or don't have these problems versus Australia. It's just the entire culture around that particular food, how it's consumed, but most importantly, how it's prepared is then making a huge difference. And
no, I mean, Germany's got a much lower metabolic disease rate than we do here.
Yes. Yep.
They've got other problems, but just trying to keep with the nutrition stuff. And as you were talking about how things are added to the food, you know, a milk or a bread enriched with calcium or folic acid, people don't realize that, first of all, it's a synthetic version of that into the food or the milk or whatever. So if it's a synthetic version, your body doesn't see it as a food. No. So that actually disrupts the entire digestive process and often shunts blood away from the periphery into the digestive tract. And because it's synthetic, a lot of people have low-level reactions. And I've seen time and time and time again, actually, especially with IBS.
Yeah.
Another one I can't think of. And diabetes. sometimes with eczema, is that the glycocalyx within the blood vessels start to wear away. So the artery itself, especially the portal vein and the inferior mesenteric artery, the portal artery, the inferior mesenteric artery starts to lose its elasticity.
Yes.
And so therefore you can't deliver proper blood flow to the organ itself to digest the thing that was supposed to be being enriched. And
then relying on that for the, you know, everyone's ticking it off in their head. Don't worry, I got my folic acid today. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And you were talking about how, you know, the government, you know, this is lacking that, so I'll put more of that in. For me, that's kind of, in a way, why we're in the state we're in collectively around the world, because we're trying to solve a problem at the level that the problem exists.
Yes.
Einstein said a problem can't be solved with the same thinking that created it. So we have to transcend the problem to get to a solution. We have to rise above it. But we can't because we're too filled up with our own literal crap.
Absolutely. And why are we waiting for the government to solve our own, like your IBS issues? You know what I mean? Like that's not, there's other things that I think people are more aware of autonomy around. Like, no, I wouldn't want someone to make that decision for me. But nutrition and food, it's not how it starts. And it's coming from the conditioning of, being taught from when you're 5 years old in primary school. Here's the food pyramid. Here's how we eat as a society. Fit into this. Okay, here we go. That the autonomy doesn't exist. And so people are passive in their decision making around the food that they put in their mouth because they're waiting for the solution to come from above, but it's not going to. And we also sadly have to be understanding that we will always be at the mercy of these huge companies that run our entire societal system and life, sanitarium, like all these ones that, and like, it's no wonder we got told to eat refined grains for breakfast. That funding and research and money came from a company that, makes that food. What a coincidence. And, it can hurt to hear that and realize that sadly the world is not the best place all the time. So don't rely on that to be what is going to set the tone for your individual life and your well-being. Bring it back to what the decision making you can make as an individual.
100%. And I think COVID was a prime example of all that. I know that's a can of worms, but it really showcased where people are at. People, as soon as that happened, they lost the capacity just to think for themselves.
Yes.
About an idea, which is the irony of the whole thing. Yes. And people just, just sheep herd mentality.
Yes.
And it's incredible. You're talking about variety before, where most people eat 5 different veggies a week type thing.
Yes.
I would argue they'd probably do that throughout their entire life.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it's also what they're, why do you eat that? Well, that's what my parents eat. So, okay. So you've also been eating that since you were not even a born human yet, because you were built inside your mummy's tum. And that was the same amount of variety of foods that she and your father ate at that time. Yeah. Food variety, and also how we actually prepare our food and the lack of variety in that is arguably one of the most important areas that I, at least from a clinical perspective, when starting to work with people, I'm almost like, before we even go down that rabbit hole of specifics, I just want you to add one new food this week, and I want you to prepare one food differently. So the best example would be, let's say every Thursday night your family makes spag bowl. They prepare the mince the same way, and maybe you chop up a bit of carrot to hide into the mince, and that's it. Okay, well, you know what? I want you to eat the carrot raw. Eat the carrot raw. Don't even add it to the mince. Just, it's same meal, same ingredients, whatever. Prepare the spag bowl the same, but have the carrot raw for once. Because there is a difference in processing, especially for vegetables, with the water-soluble vitamins. The moment you're heat preparing those, or, cooking them, processing them, the moment they're even picked from the soil, the difference in the contents of their water-soluble vitamins is dropping so much, and a lot of the minerals as well. One of the best ones is spinach, and how it does get a little bit raved about. It's a good source of vitamin C. Up to about 80% of that is gone the moment it's picked from its soil source. Maybe you've removed that from the ground, or wherever, whatever the food is growing from, wherever. Nutrients are dropping, time is ticking. And that's also comes back to like how we prepare our food now. Like, we're not out hunting, gathering, eating and consuming the food that we just picked this morning. It's coming to us days and days later. And so even then, sometimes it's not as bad of a situation if you're having let's say it's organic and it's frozen produce, let's say you've got organic frozen, I know something random, broccoli, for example, you know, again, it's not an immediate, well, oh, but because it's frozen and like it's not a fresh piece of broccoli, then it must be worse. I'll come here and make that argument too. Well, if it was frozen closer to the time of being picked, I'd probably pick that for you over the broccoli that sat on the supermarket shelves the past 6 days and no one's bought it, and who knows how many days that it took to get from the farms to your store. So point again, coming back that you're unfortunately, we're so separated from how our food is shown up to us that's why just bring it back to the variety. I have fresh veg, I have frozen veg, I have cooked veg, I have raw veg. Like, let's just get a variety of veg so you're ticking off multiple possibilities of nutrient levels and food processing to make sure that you're giving yourself the best opportunity to get a good variety of intake.
Yeah, I mean, on variety, it's funny because I'm taken back to my PT days where I would get up at 4:30 to start at 6, but I'd make myself a good breakfast every day. Every day for about 10 years, I had eggs.
Yeah.
And now, today, I can't have eggs, not because I'm sick of them, but because I actually get an immune response.
Oh, wow, yes.
From too many eggs. So if I have eggs today, which a dietitian told me I should be eating because they're so healthy, not saying they're not healthy.
No, but for you, they're not
for me, my body's like, nah, done that. And I'll get a croaky throat, not always a blocked nose, but I'll get like I'll be after eating eggs every single time. I tried it again recently and it's still
the same.
Still there.
Yeah, see, it's just, again, it's you can overdo it with foods, and that's what we do all the time. You know, we overdo it, and I just will be so content to have the same. This is actually one as well that you'll find fascinating. There are so many people that, you know, on paper they're eating what society would deem the perfect diet right now. I have overnight oats with protein powder and berries for breakfast, and then at lunch I have the exact same tuna and salad, and then at dinner I make a piece of steak and broccoli and carrot. And it's like, cool, you have that every single day or even every second day. And so your body, as you said, and then you're still struggling with other things, but I'm still bloated or I'm still brain fog or I'm still struggling with this. I'm like, it's because your body is done with that food. You've given it the exact same nutrient profile every day and exposure to the same foods that you are in a state of disease, even though that is a perfect diet, if you want to call it. It's just not the case. Variety.
And that would change from day to day, week to week, season to season.
Yeah. Or even for women, month to month with their hormonal cycles. Do you think you can eat the same thing, you know, in your luteal phase versus your follicular phase? No, we're going to have to change that. And, you know, there is also the argument to be made. I do think we're going a little bit too far down the road sometimes of women now feeling like they have to overhaul their whole life depending on the stage of their cycle. But it's something to at least consider. You know, it's not a coincidence that you're hungrier in your luteal phase when your body is burning more energy every day. It's preparing for a bleed, which is, it's not an easy thing to shed your endometrial lining every month. You know, that is why you're hungrier. You have a higher energy caloric requirement at that time. Honor that cravings, eat some more wholesome nutrition food and nutritious foods, and don't beat yourself up about it. Like this is what your body is telling you. Listen to your body, you know, listen to it.
Yeah, your body knows what it wants. And it's funny, the cravings some people get, I always say, just go for it.
Exactly.
And don't feel guilty.
Oh, and you know, cravings is such a good one to bring up because it's like, well, why? Okay, so you crave sugar at 3 p.m. All right, let's talk about it. Why you crave sugar at 3 p.m. Tell me what you're eating earlier in the day. Oh, I don't eat brekkie. I don't have time. And then, well, what do you have then? Oh, well, don't worry. I have at 10 o'clock. I have a coffee, and then I have another one at 11. Do you eat lunch? Yeah, I'll eat lunch at maybe 1 p.m. What do you have? Oh, maybe just a store-bought salad and tuna, again, because it's in my drawer at work. And I'm like, okay, so you've probably eaten maybe 300 calories in food, maybe 500 calories in these milky coffees, and maybe like 10% of your nutritional needs for the day, and 0 protein. Like or whatever, 20 grams or something from a little bit of tuna and like from the milk. And you're wondering why your body is craving a sugar hit again in the afternoon. You haven't given it enough. starving. Your brain is starving. And so listen to that and observe the rest of your day. You're craving salt? Okay, well, let's check your thyroid. Like, you know, what's going on? Like, all of these things, cravings are huge cues. And I do find it, I'll always ask people about their cravings and like very specifically, you know, across the day, what are the cravings? Give me the exact food, the exact brand, like what is it? Because that's going to tell me one of the most important points of where's the deficiency in your day then, whatever you're craving. So listen to that, honor it, and also figure out what is there anything underlying getting to me to that point in the first place.
Could not agree more.
You've been listening to part 1 of the Body's Compass podcast with Matt Sorensen and today's guest, Lani Finau. Check out Lani's Instagram at by_Lani or her website www.by-lani.com. If you like this week's episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the platform you're listening from. Please share this episode with someone you think it might help. If you want to find out more, give us a follow on Instagram at The Body's Compass, subscribe to Matt's YouTube at Matt Sorensen Live, or swing by heelhub.net. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time.